But my number one advice would be, if you're working Monday through Friday, take either Saturday or Sunday, put an 8-hour block in your calendar, spend time, clock in on your own dream, work on it every day. And by the time you get a few months down the road, if you're pursuing that, working on it regularly, I think you'll see some progress.
This is Pittsburgh, a place where a rich heritage of making things and a fierce independent nature come together to create a thriving entrepreneurial community. Whether you're a small business owner looking for ideas or inspiration, or you're an enthusiastic supporter of local businesses, you'll find it here. I'm your host, Darin Vilano, and this is the Proprietors of Pittsburgh podcast. I'm here today with Garrett Davis. He's my guest today. He's a personal trainer. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show, Garrett, is because you have your feet in two worlds. You know, on the one hand, you are an employee, you're working for a gym,
Yes.
but you also have a small business or a solo business, whatever you want to call it, where you're working for yourself as a personal trainer. And so I think you have an interesting viewpoint for people out there that may be listening to this that are in that same position, because there's people out there that have, maybe right now they're just working as an employee, but there's something they want to start, and they're thinking about how to do it or whether they have the time to do it. Or there's some folks out there that may be in the same position as you. They're doing two things. They're working as an employee. That's feeding them and bringing in the money, but they also have this business that they're growing and they're trying to expand and build. For some people, maybe because they want that to take over what they're doing full time. And for other people, they just want to keep it on the side. Some people like the security of working. And I mean, that's one of the things I was curious about you. I mean, you're doing this. Is your goal, do you always want to keep it on the side as a side thing where you want the stability and the constant paycheck of working with somebody, and you're just going to be a personal trainer on the side as a side hustle or a side business? Or do you plan to have one overtake the other and just work for yourself full time? And what are your goals with what you're doing?
So currently, you're right, Darin. I've been somewhat conflicted previously as far as chasing my dream as being self-employed, personal training with clients that I choose to be with, and having that job where I'm employed, where I have a bigger company helping to feed the constant paycheck. My long-term goal is to absolutely transform my schedule into all self-employment. Independent contracting, personal training, seeing clients, working in-home, outdoors, things of that nature. In my past, I've needed a little more of a push from a company to where I could rely on that regular check and things like that, just to take care of foundational things, bills and things of that nature. But I did come to this crossroads where I'm realizing that the grass is greener on the other side. It's really nice to be able to move to my own beat, see clients at the time that I choose, and give them the results that they deserve through the services that I like to provide.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's always nice to think about having your own business, but you see now that you're doing it and you see some of the hard parts, the drawbacks, if you will, the tougher parts. What are some of the tougher parts for you in making this transition and working with your own clients? What are the things that you've been challenged with, or that you've been most surprised about as you've done it more?
So I would say my biggest challenge would be just to get that snowball effect. For me, I've always had that head start. I've always had 4, 5, 6, 7 clients. But to build a full-scale business out of it, you need a little more than that. I think I came from a place where I was just comfortable with that number previously. It was nice to have that side hustle, like you mentioned, to have that supplemental income coming in from clients, as well as getting a check from a big box gym. But it's great to see the other side of it. I can charge what I'd like to charge and what I feel I deserve for my services when I do it independently, versus when I'm working for someone else as an employee. It's their pay scale. I get what I get. Usually it's a good number, but it's not always what I'd like it to be. And more so than that, I like to move to my own beat. I want to see clients on my time, and I'd like them to be happy and satisfied. So
it sounds like what you're challenged with is taking it beyond the handful of clients that got you started as a side business, is taking it. So what's specifically in that? Is it marketing to find more people, to find more more leads? Is it, building your own infrastructure, your own website, your own processes, getting your pricing down? I mean, what specifically are some of those hurdles that you're currently facing?
So like you mentioned, Darin, I think it's just legitimizing everything. Everything in the past has kind of been freestyle, just going with the flow. I've always had that handful of clients, and they've always had friends that might be interested. Referrals always helped in the past as far as bringing people in. Challenges would be, like you said, a website, putting something up where I could have people, leave their name, phone number, email, things of that nature, and I can reach out to them. I've made strides towards that recently, using some third-party services to create leads and things of that nature. For me, it's just always been about buckling down and doing it. With me having my, part-time employment through a company, it's easy to clock in and work on someone else's dream, but it's tougher to clock in on your own dream.
Make that transition and go from working from them to working for yourself.
Right. Sometimes you get caught up in your schedule. I work about 3 to 4 days a week at a gym. So with my free time, I have family time and things to tend to outside of that. So, you tend to get a little distracted and slow down a bit. But recently I've been putting more fire behind my motivation and getting things
So
moving.
it's almost like when you clock out of the job where you're an employee.
Yes.
It can be sometimes hard to make that transition and clock into your own job, because what happens to a lot of us is we clock out when we're doing both things. And I've been in this position, by the way, years ago. I'm not in this position now, and for, I don't know, 6-7 years or more now, I've been working for myself. So I haven't been in this position in a while, but I was for many years. I worked for a corporation, several different big companies, and I had a side hustle, because I loved entrepreneurship and I grew up with it, and I always wanted to have my hands in other business ventures, and I did a whole variety of things with partners, some things on my own. And I found that same, even though I was very motivated and I put a lot of hours in after I clocked out, if you will, and a lot of hours on the weekends, it still can be hard, because I know what you mean. You clock out, but then you want to just relax for a minute. You want to take a deep breath and say, okay, I got to go to the grocery store and I got to do my errands and I got to spend time with my family. And I didn't have kids or wasn't married at that time. You have a child, as you mentioned. So you want to spend some time there. So I know what you mean. It could be hard to make that transition. Has having the child motivated you now to do this even more? I mean, which way has it taken you? Are you more motivated because you have that responsibility to build your business even more, or are you leaning more towards the employee side because of that?
Absolutely. I've heard many times before, you can't pass a job down to your children, but you can pass a business down to your children, and you can pass, income and money that you've saved from things.
Right.
So as great as employment is with the company, I want something that can build a legacy. I want something that I can leave for my son one day. And yeah, absolutely. That's been the deciding factor.
So it's motivated you and pushed you even more.
Absolutely.
To do what you're doing.
And more so than the income, to me, what's important is flexibility in my schedule. I don't want to be a father that's locked down to a 40-an-hour week job, where I have to miss a soccer game or a football game or even just a picnic out in the woods just because I needed to make money to pay bills that month.
Right.
I want to be in a position where I can make all the money I need to pay my bills, be happy, and do whatever I need to make my child happy through life as well.
I mean, personal training seems like the type of work that I could see why a lot of business owners and solopreneurs gravitate to that. Because number one, it seems like the kind of thing that you could do on the side, because if you're working in a gym or even something unrelated, but you're passionate about working out with people and training people, it seems like it's got low overhead because you're usually using the either somebody else's equipment or using a gym's equipment, right?
Correct.
The time is flexible because you're going with the time that matches with you and the client. You're making a decent amount per hour. You're only getting paid when you're working, but the pay per hour is high enough that you only have to work so many hours for it to be lucrative. And it's very flexible.
Absolutely.
And you don't really need employees unless you wanted to. Now, some people do grow a whole business and want to build employees and have a whole set of people underneath them, and that's fine.
Right.
Or even build a gym. But if that's not your goal, if you just want to see clients one-on-one, this strikes me as the type of profession that you could easily do this. Is that one of the reasons why you gravitated towards it?
Absolutely. I've always been a fan of working smarter rather than harder. I've also, in the same sense, never been afraid of hard work. But I figure if I can get double the work done in half the time, why not, you know? So that's why personal training has appealed to me. When I first had started at a low level, you know, position in a gym, working just as a personal trainer, my income could be as good as $30 an hour or something like that. I started seeing people in their homes, and it almost doubled just for the same amount of time.
Because you're not sharing the money with the gym. Or
Absolutely,
the
absolutely. You're getting the entire check rather than splitting it with a gym or any company you may be working with as a contractor, things like that. So for me, yeah, that really appealed to me. That number one, I could get 100% of the earned income through that service. And like I said, I can be that entrepreneur that has that hands-on approach that can mold my business the way I want it molded.
And what attracted you to personal training to begin with, or even gym work to begin with? What was it that, I mean, did you have an athletic background? Did you have some reason that you were drawn to this
Yes.
even as a profession before you started to even do it for yourself?
Yes. So I grew up a young, rambunctious kid playing basketball in the streets with my friends, you know, pick up football, flag football, things like that. So I started playing contact football in about 6th grade. I grew up in the inner city, moved out to the suburbs. Wasn't as much to do in the suburbs. So I gravitated towards football, started playing football at 6th grade, fell in love. I loved it a lot. I always had an interest in football. So I played from 6th grade till graduation, all through high school. Went pretty well. Towards the end of high school, they were getting a lot more conscious of concussions and a lot of drawbacks that come with contact sports like that. So my gear started to shift more towards how can I make money off of my brain rather than my body, or maybe a mix of both that's a little less impact involved, or, you know, I can do this long term. As you know, the average NFL player is 8 years nowadays. So it's tough to make your life savings during that amount of time unless you're one of the best guys in the league, you know? So yeah, as far as that's concerned,
So you wanted to be in the gym and being around the physical activity and helping people, but not
still wanted
necessarily
to be
on
physical,
the field.
didn't want to bang my head up as much, you know?
Yeah.
So that led me to, I was already working out for football. It's already a physical kind of thing. So I just kept working out, kept staying in the gym. Friends started to notice there, hey, Garrett, you're looking pretty good. You know, you're adding some muscle. How can I do that? And I'm like, okay, let me help you out, show you. After a while, you get 3-4 people that want to work out all the time, and you're like, hey, I could probably start charging for this. And I didn't want to necessarily charge my friends for it either. So I figured, hey, let's get some other people involved. I can make their life a little better quality. They can breathe better, run better, lift a little weights, and I can make an income off of it too and be helpful to other people.
Yeah. And it snowballed from there. You got in the gym, started working out as a trainer under other people, learning from other people.
Absolutely.
And eventually getting to the point, going to a few different gyms, and then going to the point where you're at now, where you started to, what gave you the confidence to first go out on your own and grab some clients? Was it just natural for you because you had already done it in the gym, like you said, with your friends, and it wasn't a big deal to just work out a few people on the side? Or was it hard for you to go out and market yourself or to tell people about who you are and what you're doing?
So it's never been my strong point to pound the pavement and be in front of people's faces and, hey, I'm a personal trainer, come work with me. I never went to, you know, fairs or went to public events necessarily. I do think that may be a good avenue for certain people. I've always had the luxury of having clients that would like to do word of mouth. So I'd have a really good client. I'd be treating them right. They might tell a family member they'd want to get involved, things like that. I do think there's something to be said for having the right type of clientele too. A lot of people want to work with 20, 25 people, but I think there's a lot to be said for working with the right 10 or 15 people that suit you well.
You know, you had the confidence then to get out, and then just, you got a few people, they referred you.
Yes,
when they referred you, you didn't have to, it wasn't really a confidence issue because you were already warm.
Right. They kind of gave me that confidence. Like, hey, this guy's good. I want my friend or relative to work with them. Kind of snowballed. My confidence has always been pretty good in the fitness realm. I feel like initially when I jumped into the fitness game, I did a lot of research. I researched different ways to work out, what was effective, what wasn't working. So I feel like I built a good foundation there. I have a really good certification, a pretty high-end certification. So they definitely prepped me knowledge-wise to be confident in what I do and how I get in front of people. Marketing-wise, I have tried things as far as going into businesses, putting out flyers, things like that, letting them know that, hey, I'm here and things like that. I have seen some success with it. I feel like it's better, more targeted. So if you know there's a park in town and they have fitness classes in the area, maybe take a couple of your clients out there and do a couple workouts, and people will notice and maybe might ask, hey, can I join in with you guys?
That's a great idea. So, I mean, I was going to ask you what things, you mentioned marketing, what things you've tried that worked or didn't work. So the flyer thing didn't work as well, kind of the blank canvassing of an area.
Yes. So I was in a kind of a joint venture with a guy. We were both helping to build up a business. And I was taking out, paperwork, flyers perhaps things like that.
Were you handing them out to people coming in the store?
Sure. So for example, we'd go into Giant Eagle. I'd go talk to their customer service people. I'd say, hey, we have a business around the corner. We're helping people get in shape. Can I leave you a couple flyers if you have anybody interested, any employees or anybody that is a customer that wants to work out, let us know. Didn't get too much response from that. Number one, I think it wasn't targeted the right way. Had we gone into fitness affiliated facilities, that might have been a better idea.
Right.
We were more hitting gas stations, Giant Eagles,
places where the masses were going to, but not necessarily your target.
Right. And previous to that, years back, I had made personal business cards and did something similar. I'd drop a few at Dick's. I'd drop a few at local places like that. I think it's more effective to maybe do like a presentation, for example. I think if we had time to schedule a meeting with Giant Eagle and had 10 of their employees in a room and did a presentation, this is how you can get in shape. We're here to help you. That might be a little more effective. And flyers aren't a bad idea, but I think it's better to go a step farther and kind of put a little more icing on the cake.
Yeah. I mean, what other areas of your business are you working on? And, we talked about the marketing, the pricing. Have you changed that? Has that moved up and down? Have you experienced things that have worked and didn't work with pricing as well? Sure.
So when I first started, my mentality was take on as many people as I could, no matter the price, as long as I'm working for a fair wage, why not? It's a good lifestyle. So I soon noticed clients get used to discounts and things like that. So if you start at 30 and you're down to 25, you don't have much more wiggle room before you're at 20 and 18.
Yes.
So I've noticed that it definitely helps to keep your price solid and also make it reflect how you respect your time, as well as how the client's going to value your time as well.
Because don't you find that when you charge more because you value your time, and that you're charging at a level, not just charging more to charge more, but you're charging at a level that matches the value you're giving, that people honor that more.
Absolutely.
And that in the end will respect that versus the discount.
Absolutely.
People get used to, they get hooked on the discount. And that's why when I consult with people, small business owners and entrepreneurs all the time, I always caution them on discounting. There's a time and a place for it, for the right type of business and the right type of product or service. I'm not saying it's not always bad, but you do have to be careful, especially depending on what you're doing. Sure. And in your case, you're providing a high touch service where you're working one-on-one with somebody. You're really getting to know them, and you're providing a high level of service, and you're an expert in your area. And if you just come out of the gate and discount, then you can hook them on that, and you get people that are buying from you for the wrong reasons, because they're bargain hunters and things like that. And then it ends up being a difficult relationship.
Exactly.
Is that the experience you
Absolutely. And a certain price point attracts a certain kind of client as well. If you have a high end price point, they know that you're the real deal. And if not, they'll find out very quickly that you're not. Right. So luckily, I've been on the winning side of that. My clients that I've seen respect my price point now. In the past, I've had other certifications that weren't as fancy, for lack of better words. This one's pretty high end. So since I have upgraded my certification, I feel much more confident charging a higher price point. And I do feel that adds value to the session. I feel that the client respects the time a little differently, and they respect the service that they get out of it much more different. So
what interests you about being a business owner? We talked a lot about personal training and why you gravitated with your background in personal training, and the fact that you're doing both, working for someone else and doing it yourself, and all the benefits to doing it for yourself with this type of business. But just being a business owner in general, did you have any role models, for example, growing up that were business owners in your family? Or was there somebody that you saw on TV or online, or that sort of was a role model for you out there that you saw that was, kicking ass, that was doing a great job, and you're like, yeah, I want to be like that person. I want to be in control. I want to have my own business. I'm just wondering where it comes from. I usually ask this from with different people, because people have different motivations and reasons for how they come to it, and I always find it interesting. For me personally, for example, I had an influence at a young age, because I had two prominent people in my life that were small business owners. My mom, who had a hair salon, and my uncle, who had a few different businesses. One was a record store. This is back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Started with vinyl records in the 70s, and then, of course, it spilled over into the 80s, and then eventually in the 90s, it became CDs.
Cool.
This is a dinosaur. You don't see these anymore.
Sure.
And then he had a video store back in the 80s, an actual VHS video store. And I was thinking about this, Garrett, the other day. I was thinking, because I've thought about this. This impacted me a lot in terms of my own interest in being a business owner. And I was thinking back, not just as I am today, as an adult, looking back on myself when I was young and how this impacted me, but I was actually sitting there trying to think about, what was I thinking when I was 12 years old, 13 years old? And I remember when my uncle opened up his video store in the 80s, and I must have been 12, 13 years old. And I remember going over there to help. I mean, I don't know. I probably couldn't help a whole lot. I mean, I was a kid, but
sure.
Here's some videos, stock the shelves or whatever. He was giving me little things to do, mm-hmm. Clean the shelves off, stack the videos and everything. But I remember what I felt when I went into this building, this storefront that he rented or whatever, mm-hmm. and he was put his name on the front, the name of his store on the front, mm-hmm. and it was his business. He had the key to the door. It impacted me so much that when I was thinking about this the other day, I mean, I didn't realize how much until I really started to think about, what was I feeling and thinking at that age when I walked into that door? Mm-hmm. And I could tell you, I had a lot of pride, even though it wasn't my business, because here's this family member, my uncle,
yep.
who was a close family member that I was close to, who had this store. And it was a big deal in the 80s to have a store.
Yeah.
And, because we didn't have the internet, so you didn't have online retail. It didn't exist. It was zero. Everything was 100%
in person.
Yep. You had to walk into a store. So it was a huge sense of pride for me. And it made me want, between him and my mother, especially, because they both had businesses, different types of businesses, but it made me want to be a business owner. It was like I naturally just gravitated to that at a young age, even though I probably couldn't articulate that at that point, because mm-hmm. I didn't know how to put it into words. And we didn't use the word entrepreneur then. Mm-hmm. In the 1980s, we just called it business owner. Right. You just said business owner, or you said, for my uncle, he was a businessman. Sure, my mother was a businesswoman. That's sort of how we referred to it, or mm-hmm. business owner. We didn't say entrepreneur. We weren't fancy. But it was a huge sense of pride for me, and it impacted me in a big way. And I remember I would probably I can't remember exactly, but I probably went to school and bragged that my uncle had this video store and my mom had a business. And it was kind of a big deal because they were self-employed, earning their own income as opposed to working for somebody else. Nothing wrong with working for somebody else, mm-hmm. but it was a whole different thing to generate your own income. And I know that influenced me. I mean, I don't know if you had anybody in your family that were business owners, or some people don't have that, but they maybe saw somebody from afar, or whether it was magazine, TV, newspaper, that they sort of looked up to and became a role model of sorts and inspired them. I mean, did you have any of that, or was it just, I just want to run my own business, I just want to control my own?
So a little of both, Darin. I grew up. My father's always had a hand in real estate. He's always had a few buildings with a couple tenants that pay rent and things of that nature. Tenants weren't always the best, and they didn't always pay on time, but it always seemed like a nice income, a nice side thing to do, to have people that are giving you a check, and you don't necessarily have to clock in. You always have that income coming in. So that definitely influenced me as a child. I noticed my dad was able to have more free time due to real estate and things of that nature. Although my father also had, his job as an employee, he always seemed to be happy with that side of his work. So definitely my father had definitely influenced me there. As far as mentors and people that I've ran into later on in life, as I was working in a big box, I had a guy, a friend of mine, and he worked in the gym as well as outside the gym doing in-home training. And so this guy had approached me about potentially working with him and things like that. So fast forward a little, maybe a month or two later after we met, he invited me to come to an in-home session with him. That's when my world changed. I went into this in-home session. It was the first time I saw an in-home personal training session. And this guy he was so delicate. It was an older client as well, but he was just able to spend so much time being delicate with him, personalizing all his service. He had this elderly guy riding a bike for 1.5 miles or something like that, from zero. So he really built this guy up, and he did it on his own time. He drove there in his own vehicle and charged his own price. And I thought, what a better situation. This guy also lived a pretty nice lifestyle too. He worked in the big box gym with me, but he also did his in-home outside of the gym. We started talking. He let me know he made about $7K that month in personal training.
Wow.
Just independently. And I didn't even know that number was reachable. I'm sitting there at 1.5, $2 grand a month thinking, oh, this is pretty nice.
That made an impression for sure.
It pushed the ceiling way up. I realized it could transform from a job to a career to financial freedom one day. So, and you know, he had all these fancy cars and nice things that he had with him. But it put it in front of me that I could do it, and it's reachable in front of me. You hear all these glory stories about people getting rich off gyms and working out and personal training and things like that. But to see it right in front of me and know that it's in my local neighborhood really, really made a difference.
I mean, that you mentioned how he helped that elderly client. I mean, I would imagine that's also a big motivating factor in doing personal training is the impact that you see. You're helping somebody physically, mentally, because their mind's better if they feel better in their body.
Yes.
If they're elderly, maybe you're helping them be more mobile or do things they couldn't do if they're a child or if they have a disability. You're helping them adapt or cope with that. If there's somebody working out to make a team or to do something sports related, you're helping them to accomplish that goal. Or maybe it's that person that just wants to be in better shape and lose weight and feel better about themselves. I mean, this has got to be a really gratifying reason why you would want to do. I mean, does that also a big part of why you do it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's probably, I'd say 75 to 80% of why I do it. I feel there's 100,000 million jobs out there you could make good money off of. But I think what brings somebody real happiness is gratifying feelings after you perform your service. If you feel like that client has a lot of gratitude for what you did and you made a difference in their life that day or past that day, it's very gratifying. You feel really good about it. And yeah, that to me, I always wanted to work and make good money, but I also wanted to have a more of a meaning to what I do. And if I can change somebody's life through 1 hour, 3 times, 4 times a week and make an impact on their entire life, that's pretty big to me.
Is there anything that comes to mind, anybody that you worked with that said something to you afterwards or you saw them progress that inspired you or that stands out?
Sure. So I've had, you know, a couple clients. One, for example, she was about 21, 22 years old. I was about her age too when I started training with her, actually. And she was overweight. She ended up losing about 70 or 80 pounds throughout the course of about a year and a half. Maybe upwards to 2 years, between a year and a half and 2 years. But it's amazing.
Quality of life
she turned into a completely different person. She was out with friends more. It seemed like she was able to enjoy her time with her family more. If younger ones in her family were running around outside, she's able to frolic with them instead of having to sit down and take a break after, you know, running for too long or walking for too long. So that made a big difference for me. The biggest story and contribution I've made to a client's life. I had a lady when I was working in a big box gym as well. Her doctor let her know that they were looking to have a baby in their life. So her doctor let her know if she lost X amount of body fat, she'd be in a much safer position to have a child safely and health wise. So we had this goal set. We put that amount of body fat on a piece of paper and we said, we're going to get that done. Fast forward a couple years later, after working with her, she had a beautiful baby girl. They ended up calling me Uncle Garrett for a while because of, you know, they felt I was a part of the process. I ended up training the lady's husband not too long after the child was born because he saw his wife was looking great, feeling great. You know, they got
he wanted a little bit of that too.
Yeah, he wanted a little slice of the pie too. And now he had a little girl running around to keep up with too. So that was probably the most hands-on, intricate, you know, process that I've had with somebody.
It spanned the time. It spanned a couple years, and you got to see it from beginning to end. And an actual baby come out the other side.
Absolutely,
that was the proof of what you did.
Yes.
What's next for you in your business? Where are you? You know, you're in early stages, as we talked about. You know, you're still working on the web presence. You're still, you're not really doing some of these things yet because you're still doing both, having the handful of clients and working in a gym, but your goal was to build your own business. So
Yes.
what's next? What do you want to do? What are you excited about doing in your business to really start to build it?
So I think the biggest hurdle I've had is just like I said, doing it. I just got to sit down at a desk and type, put my pictures in, put my videos in.
Is that because you're more of like you like to be in front of, you like to spend your time with clients and do
I
hands-on, where you're less of a computer guy or a book guy?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I'm definitely a little more hands-on. I enjoy the more within the session than outside of it, as far as like posting videos, pictures, things like that. So I'm not sure if I need to kind of find somebody to help me with that aspect, or if I need to get my butt in gear to do it, or maybe a combination of both. But yeah, that's my next step to take my business to the next level, is to create a web presence, like you said. I'd like to get some lead sources where I can just have 5-10 leads a week. I see half of them join, continue with half of them long term, things like that. So for me, I'm just looking to find that funnel where I can get clients together, see them if they're interested, get them signed up. I want to take myself to the guy I referenced. I want to get to his level and maybe even a little bit farther down the line as well.
I mean, you mentioned a good point, which is, and I want to stop here and just say that a lot of small business owners, or people just starting out, or people that are working for someone and have a side hustle, that this is a common situation that a lot of people find themselves in, which is they love what they do, but they don't really know how to, or don't want to do some of the things that are necessary to run their own business. Because as soon as people get into this, running their own business, they quickly find out that there's a lot more to it than just seeing the clients or selling the product or making the product. There is the business side of it. There's the marketing, there's the finance, there's the bookkeeping, there's the operations. There's, in some cases, people have employees or they need to get employees. And so there's the hiring and the firing. There's the learning different systems online to be able to manage what you're doing. So, whether it's Shopify, or you're selling a product, or getting on Amazon, or trying to sell your product through a big box store or a grocery store. And then you have to go out and be a salesperson and be able to sell. There's so many aspects of what it takes to run a business besides just doing the thing that is the end thing that generates the income, that a lot of people quickly find out they either don't want to do it, they don't like to do it, it's hard to get motivated to do it. And you brought that up, and I just thought it was a good point to say here, that I encourage people in cases like this there's different options that you have. One is you can find a partner. And I'm not saying that this is right for you, Garrett. I mean, you may not want to have a business partner, but I'll give you a couple different options. But one of them is you could have for the right person out there. Now for you, maybe it is. Maybe you have another personal training buddy who brings to the table a whole host of things that you don't. So say your bread and butter is that you like to train, or you do best with athletes, young high school, grade school, collegiate athletes. Maybe you have a background working with elderly people, or maybe it's families, like the lady that you had mentioned that was going to have a child. So maybe you have a niche. Maybe your partner is somebody that is a completely different niche. So you're not necessarily stealing clients from each other, or in other words, not that you're stealing clients, but you're, as a combined entity, you and the other person, you're actually seeing a broader spectrum of clients, because you have one group, but maybe they specialize in corporate work or something like that. So they're saying they're operating in the city, they're in an urban environment, and maybe they're seeing people that are in a strict 9-to-5 work environment and have a certain amount of time at lunch or before work or after work to work out. And they're seeing that business clientele. And together you're seeing a larger group of people. And that person maybe brings to the table some things that you don't have. So maybe they love computer work or they love sales work, and you love, going out and promoting the business in a different way. Or you don't mind, again, I'm just making stuff up here, but you don't mind the bookkeeping, but they don't mind working, answering the phone or whatever. You find overlapping things that you guys like to do and don't like to do, so that together you're a more powerful combination. Now, there's pros and cons to this. You have to work through having a partner and having the right agreement. And there's, that's a whole different, show in of itself, just talking through that. But that's all, I encourage people to think about that. And sometimes people go, yeah, I never thought about that. I never thought that how my life could actually be easier if I found the right partner. Some people say, I don't want a partner. I don't want to share the revenue, or I don't want to I've tried that before. It didn't work. But, and for some people, it's not the right fit. And another way to do it is, if you don't want a full-fledged equity partner in your business, is find a partner that's not an actual partner in your business. But I mean, by partner, I mean somebody that you can work with who is going to help you fill the gaps of those areas, but you're paying them to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's, an advisor, a consultant, a third party, an independent contractor, in other words. So say you're great out of a lot of things, but marketing or marketing strategy isn't your best. You need somebody to sit down with you and have a full-fledged multi-pronged strategy of what you're pricing, what your promotion, where are you doing your advertising, how are you putting the whole piece together, and you find somebody out there that is an expert in that area that you could plug into your business. You pay them, you work with them as needed, but they're not involved in everything else, and they don't also own part of your business. So it's still your business, but you're just hiring a marketing, or maybe it's finance. Maybe you're good with marketing, but you're not good with numbers. You're terrible with numbers. You don't want to do the bookkeeping. You don't want to do the taxes. You don't want to track a lot of the spreadsheets and a lot of the things that go with that. Mm-hmm. You want somebody to help you as a finance person, and that's what you want to plug in. So you find that person. There are people out there that can do this, and that's another way to do it, because, it always saddens me when people have a lot of motivation, or they love to do what they do and they want to build their business, but they haven't gone beyond a certain point because they haven't filled in these gaps. Mm-hmm. They haven't figured out who their partner is, or who their independent contractor is, or who their virtual assistant is, or whatever it takes to help them in the area they need help in, so that they can take it to the next step. And again, you've told us some information here. I don't know your whole situation, so this wasn't all just aimed at you, but anybody listening who is in this situation, that that you can find help out there, and find people that'll help you in different ways and also for some people, it's another option is an employee. Again, I'm not saying that's your position, because when you hire an employee, you're bringing overhead. Mm-hmm. So you're making your whole operation more costly. And if you don't have the right income, you're not going to be able to pay the person. But if you're out there, you're listening to this, and you can't afford to pay somebody, even though it might be a stretch and you're not sure if you should do it, if it takes your business to the next step, if it allows you to have that person do some things that you can't do, or don't want to do, or won't do, but are necessary to be done, mm-hmm. having that employee could be a critical step for you in order to get your business, again, to the next level as well. So there's different ways to do it. And you brought that up, and it made me really think about that, because that's where a lot of people that are starting out get stuck. Either they don't even get off the ground, or they get off the ground, but they get to a certain point and they don't really go any further because they get sort of stuck in that area. And again, I'm not trying to say that that's you. It sounds like it could be a little bit, because you have some areas that you need to fill in. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage you to look at those options, or think about those options, because those could be ways for you to help grow your business and actually take it to the next step for you. So, but the last thing in closing, I just wanted to share, or I wanted you to see if you would share with us, or anybody listening, somebody who's in your position, somebody who is working for somebody but has a side business started just like you, or they want to have a side business started. What advice would you give them right off the bat in helping them to balance it or to manage it effectively? What have you learned in doing that?
What I would say is very simple. Practice makes perfect. Number one, get started. And once you do get started, keep it regular. Try to see people. Try to work out often. Put yourself out there, whether it's on your own or with clients. People notice if you do well in a gym, or you have good form, things like that. People will ask questions, and they'll wonder how you can be of service to them. My number one advice for somebody that's in my situation,
and it doesn't have to be, by the way, just personal training, but anybody doing
sure.
anything
Yep.
as an employee and wants to do something on the side is kind of
anything in that entrepreneurial realm, where somebody has an idea or a passion that they want to pursue. My number one recommendation would be to block off time where you can work on that specifically. Like we discussed, life happens. Kids are running around. They grow. You know, they only get older. So you want to spend that time with them, but you also want to spend blocked off time on working on your dream. And that's where my struggle's been, is to just lock down those days to kind of get things done. And like you mentioned, find somebody with some insight on some of those avenues that I need to fill in. But my number one advice would be, if you're working Monday through Friday, take either Saturday or Sunday, put an 8-hour block in your calendar, spend time, clock in on your own dream, work on it every day. And by the time you get a few months down the road, if you're pursuing that, working on it regularly, I think you'll see some progress.
Cool. Garrett, thanks so much for being on the show, man. I
Thanks
really
for
appreciate
having me,
it.
Darin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks.